Thank you. I'm going to turn it over to our President and Director-Counsel to give formal greetings, but I just wanted to let everyone know that you are free to take pictures and video. Please follow us and tag us on social media at NAACP_LDF. If you need to use the restrooms, they are down this hall to the left and then another left. And today's program will be live streamed on Facebook and YouTube. So that is it for me. It is now my honor to introduce my boss, our leader, for the first time at the Selma Jubilee as President and Director-Counsel, Janai Nelson.
Hello, Selma. How are you? Good afternoon. Good afternoon. It is such an honor to be here. As Jared said, this is my first Selma as President and Director-Counsel, but this is by far not my first Selma. I've been doing this for well over 20 years, and it is such an honor to be here again. Yes, there's a photo of me actually pushing a baby stroller and pregnant at the same time, crossing the bridge. And the reason that we come here every year is because it gives us such inspiration and such rejuvenation to come and stand on the soil of the birthplace of modern democracy. That is Selma. But I want to begin by saying thank you. I don't see Pastor Strong in here. I don't know if he's here, but Lord knows he's got enough to do this weekend. So if he's not here, he is fully excused. But I do want to thank him in absentia for his allowing us to be here. And the congregation of Brown Chapel AME and the Edmundite Mission for sharing this sacred time and space with us. You all are inundated with people who come every year and descend upon Selma, and you welcome us with open arms, and we are grateful. So thank you. I also want to thank our wonderful staff. You see a lot of people running around with Fulfill the Promise of Selma t-shirts on. Those are all staff of the Legal Defense Fund, and I am personally going to give them a hand for all the work that they've done to create this event. And we have such a wonderful panel. I know you are eager to hear from them. I'm eager to be in conversation with them. But I also must thank Representative Congresswoman, your Congresswoman, Terri Sewell, for being here today. We are so grateful for her partnership and more important for her leadership and how hard she goes for Selma. And we know that that is critically important. There was a panel earlier today by our friends at the Lawyers Committee talking about the investments that need to be made in Selma, and we fully support that and hope that we can continue to do our part. It is an honor and a privilege for us to join in the organization of the Jubilee every year, as we have done for over the past 20 years. It is something that we hold sacred, and that is part of the work that we do to advance voting rights in this country. I wanted to say just a few words about our reason for being here. We're here because we frankly never left. For those of you who know the history of the Legal Defense Fund, you know we were founded in 1940 by Thurgood Marshall, and we were part of the seismic shift in securing voting rights that occurred in Selma. You all know the history, that the march was scheduled to happen, and it was derailed by violence, by vicious reactions to people asserting their birthright as American citizens to exercise the fundamental right to vote. The Legal Defense Fund was fortunate enough to be here to intervene, to secure a court order. And it's funny, people think about lawyers standing in front of judges and courtrooms and writing briefs and doing all of that sort of academic stuff, but the lawyers of the Legal Defense Fund, Jack Greenberg and Jim Nabrett and Thurgood Marshall, were on a hotel floor sketching out the map, the route from Brown Chapel to the bridge through Montgomery, to submit that path to the court and have it be an exhibit in a court order so that they could walk unobstructed and obtain the right to vote that we enjoy today. And we enjoy that right, but we don't enjoy it fully. And that's what we're here to talk about today. The power and the promise of the Voting Rights Act of 1965 has not been fully realized. And we know that not only are we facing obstructions to advancement we're also facing retrogression. We're facing obstacles that want to drag us backwards, obstacles that are meant to thwart our ability to make the progress that the foot soldiers who we honor when we come to Selma and the freedom fighters who we honor when we come to Selma envisioned for all of us. So today when we talk about Selma to SCOTUS, we do that because we want to emphasize that the fight is both local and national. We want to emphasize that the fight is not only just protest is absolutely necessary, it's also about the prosecution of the laws of this country to ensure our rights. Selma to SCOTUS means that this fight is not just historical, it is a present day mandate for all of us. And so we will talk today about the challenges facing the right to vote, but also what we can do, what tools we can use to advance our ability to elect representatives who will do right by us and our communities and other more marginalized communities. So we have an all-star lineup. They will be introduced. I won't go through each of them, but I will say a personal thank you to Joy Reid. She is a phenomenal journalist who always answers the call. Always answers the call when we ask her to do something this rich and this local and this community based. She does it, which shows where her heart is. And then she's also on national television, bringing it every night of the week with brilliance, with absolute brilliance and clarity. So we will get to hear some of that today. And without further ado, I want to turn the mic over to LDF's new Associate Director-Counsel, which, I love saying that. I can't tell you how much. LDF's new Associate Director-Counsel, Ms. Tona Boyd. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Janai. I love hearing it just as much as you love saying it. And thank you to everybody for joining us this afternoon. I know we are about to have an inspiring and enlightening conversation. I want to take just a second to further introduce myself. As Janai said, my name is Tona Boyd, and I have the privilege and honor of serving as the new Associate Director-Counsel at LDF. But I came to LDF, but before I came to LDF, I served as a member of the White House Counsel's Office in President Biden's administration. And as a senior member of the president's team that worked on judicial nominations, it was the honor of my career to work to aid to prepare and confirm the first Black woman to the Supreme Court, Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson. So after that incredible honor, I was able to join LDF in January of this year. So unlike Janai, this is actually my very first time to experience the hallowed ground of Selma. But it is my distinct pleasure to introduce someone who has a long-standing connection and deep roots to this community. She knows this place like the back of her hand, and she cherishes to the very marrow of her bones the sacrifices that were made here back in 1965. And that person is Congresswoman Terri Sewell. Now, like Justice Jackson, Representative Sewell is a trailblazer in her own right as the first Black woman ever elected to serve Alabama in the congressional delegation. And throughout her decade plus in Congress, she has ably served her constituents and fought to continue the legacy and the struggle for voting rights. Representative Sewell is the author and lead sponsor of the John R. Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act, and she is the co-chair of the Congressional Black Caucus's Voting Rights Task Force. And these are just two of the ways that she has been indispensable and a champion for the right to vote. I can also say, having witnessed firsthand Representative Sewell's advocacy when I was in the White House. She is a powerful and compelling force fighting for the people of Selma and her district in Washington, D.C. So simply put, I cannot think of anyone who combines such a profound understanding of where we have been and such an inspirational vision for where we need to go. So please join me in welcoming Representative Sewell.
What an introduction. I'm Congresswoman Sewell, and I proudly represent Alabama's 7th Congressional District. It includes the historic cities of Birmingham and Montgomery, and yes, my hometown of Selma, Alabama. Growing up in Selma, growing up in this place, you know, the bridge was a means for which a mode of transportation or a portal to get me home to my mom and dad. And you grow up with a very deep and rich understanding of Selma's place in history, but you also grow up understanding the decline and decay of this city. Those of us who are from Selma, those of us in my district, we're just custodians of America's history. We're custodians of that history, and it's important for us to preserve it and to advance it. I am thrilled that all of you are here, and I welcome you, and I welcome the Legal Defense Fund. Thank you so much, Janai. All of you and the hard work that the Legal Defense Fund has done. As you said, the Legal Defense Fund never left. They're still on the battlefield each and every day, and most recently in the Merrill versus Milligan case. I know that you will be talking about that. But do know that I know, coming from Selma, that I come from great stock. I come from a people who dared to make sure that this nation lived up to its ideals of equality and justice for all. It was the people of Selma, Alabama, ordinary Americans who dared, had the audacity and the temerity to make this country understand that every American should have an equal right to vote. And for that, we got the 1965 Voting Rights Act, and I know that I stand on the shoulders of not only giants, but amazing known and unknown folks. As a member, a proud member of the historic Brown Chapel AME Church, I also know, thank you, I also know that we're led ably by Pastor Strong, and I also feel in my heart that this year is different. It's different because on January 12th, this city experienced an E4 tornado that really did destroy a lot of property and did a lot of damage in Selma. So this weekend, as you are soaking up the history of Selma, I want you to see us. I want you to feel us. I want you to know that the people of this city want you not just to walk across the bridge, not just to commemorate Bloody Sunday once a year. We want you to see us and feel us and help us become the city that we know we deserve. Out of this disaster, we're going to reimagine what Selma could be, what Selma was, frankly, when I grew up here. Vibrant downtown. We want to give you something to do besides walk across that bridge and keep on walking. We want to make sure that we build back better, to use a Biden phrase, and we can do that only with your help. I'm often asked, well, what does Selma need? Everything. Everything. Don't ask a Selmian what they need. Instead, I ask you, what can you give? All of you represent communities, organizations, nonprofits, corporations that do stuff well. Whatever that is, please help Selma with it. That's how you can help Selma. And you know, I no longer think that all I do is beggar in chief for Selma. I am not only a passionate advocate of Selma, it's in my bones. Why? Because this amazing community made me the person I am today. Not Harvard Law School, not Princeton, not Oxford University. Selma High School taught me how to write. It was Selma debate team that taught me how to speak. So I want you to know that my passion for my hometown, 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 my My passion for my hometown comes from the very fabric of this community. I had parents, yes, that were teachers. My mom was a high school principal. My dad was a high school basketball coach in the only high school in Selma. Good thing I was smart because I got no dates. But anyway, and even though my parents, as educators, inculcated values for me, it was reinforced at every turn. At every turn, by my Sunday school teacher, by my Brownie troop leader, by my debate coach. And when they're calling me now, it is my classmates that are calling me because their houses were destroyed. It's my former teachers that are calling me because they've been denied, received a denial letter, and I need to walk them through it. So this is personal for me, and I hope that this particular 58th commemoration is special to all of you, because it gives you an extraordinary opportunity to give back to Selma what Selma has given to so many and to this world. And we can only do it with your help. It starts with the vote. It starts with the vote. And I am so excited that this panel will not only talk about the past, but also give us courage and encouragement and inspiration for the future. Because we know that the Shelby versus Holder decision is 10 years old. And we know that it gutted the most important provision, I think, in the Voting Rights Act, and that was pre-clearance. It was federal oversight. It was federal oversight. And you can't have federal oversight if you don't have a formula to determine which jurisdictions are the most egregious. And so my bill, the John Robert Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act, would fully restore the Voting Rights Act of 1965 by giving us a new Section 4 so that we can enforce Section 5 and make sure that we're making sure that every American has the equal right to vote. And just when we thought it was bad enough, the Shelby versus Holder decision, Alabama brought you another case, Merrill versus Milligan. It is a redistricting case that Justice Jackson was her first oral argument. She was brilliant in that argument. But I am mighty afraid that this conservative court will further gut the Voting Rights Act of 1965. So not just Section 4, but we have to now worry about Section 2. I know that you guys will get into the details of that, and I know that this panel is an esteemed panel of experts who are out there on the front lines every day. And when we got that deadly blow from the Milligan case in Alabama, that it was going up to the Supreme Court, it was on the heels of us passing out of the House of Representatives the John Robert Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act, only to go over to the Senate and to languish because of an archaic procedural rule called the filibuster. Enough is enough. We have got to mobilize and organize, and we cannot give up. If you close your eyes, you will remember, you can hear John Lewis say it, never give up, never give in. The fight for voting rights, the fight for Selma is now. Is now. And we have an opportunity to leave a legacy for our children and the next generation, and we must do all that we can to push injustice out and to let the light shine in. And in order to do that, we have to mobilize and organize. We have to remember that we can't be no ways tired because the fight is still in it. And so I hope that you come to Selma not only to reflect on the past, but that you use that as an opportunity to feel renewed, to renew yourself, to recommit yourself to the struggle that is still Selma, Alabama. Thank you for being here. And remember, please, please see us, feel us. Selma is more than just a bridge. It's a community, an amazing community that deserves better, should get better, and will continue to fight to make sure that the Selma that I grew up in is preserved and advanced in the way this nation owes this city. Thank you very much.
Selma, can we please celebrate your Congresswoman one more time, please? Thank you so much, Congresswoman Sewell. Thank you so much, Congresswoman Sewell. My next task is to introduce our moderator for this evening's panel. But does Joy Reid really need an introduction? The readout has become such an important and vital part of our culture, and a platform to lift up the issues that affect Black and brown communities. There are few people in the world, let alone in journalism, who use their platform so profoundly, so boldly, so richly to champion the causes and current events that matter to the people and communities that we all fight for. No matter where I am in the country, you will always find me in front of a screen at 8 p.m. to watch the readout and catch up on the day's events. Selma, it is my pleasure to welcome our moderator for tonight's program. We are so delighted that she is here with us. Please welcome the legendary, the incomparable Joy Reid. And we have such an all-star and dynamic panel. I'm just going to read their names and their titles, and I'll turn it over to Ms. Reid. But she is also joined by Khadidah Stone, who is the Chief Field and Campaign Strategist with Alabama Forward and our client. Mr. Evan Milligan, who is the Executive Director of Alabama Forward, and in the Merrill Milligan, that's the Milligan right there. Judith Brown Dianis, who is the Executive Director of the Advancement Project. Mr. Rashad Robinson, who is the President of Color of Change. The Honorable Sheila Jackson Lee, Congresswoman from Texas. Maya Wiley, President and CEO of the Leadership Conference on Civil and Human Rights. And an LDF alum, I will add. And the Honorable Julian Castro, former Secretary of Housing and Urban Development. Thank you.
Be in the space with LDF. Oh, wonderful. I want to congratulate Tona, who I met today. Congratulations. And thank the Congresswoman. It's wonderful to be in your district. I got two Congresswomen in the space right now, so that's an honor. Somebody said earlier, we in high cotton today, so I'm here. So thank you all. I want to just start by saying that, you know, the thing that I love about Selma and the history of this city is the story of Selma has everything. It has every piece of the drama of the American story. I mean, you think about the fact that that march, that violent march over that bridge that is named for a leader of the Ku Klux Klan, it takes place 100 years to the month. 100 years to the month after the surrender of the villain Robert E. Lee to the very much underrated Ulysses S. Grant. It's 100 years plus a month. And so you think about that people were waving Confederate flags on that bridge as those sheriffs were beating Reverend John Lewis and the other marchers. And so you think about that. And so I want to start with you, Janai, and just have you reflect on the fact that the history is so cyclical that we are in a sort of a new Confederate moment when you have a reassertion of the history of the losing side in the Civil War. They are asserting themselves and demanding to seize control of our history, but also of the rule of law. And so I just would love for you to just to reflect for a moment. You spoke a little bit about it on the dais, but on leading this organization and this battle in this era, given the history.
So thank you for that, Joy. What I'll say is what I've been saying a lot lately, and that is that what's clear is that the fight for racial justice is not one that has a conclusion in this country. It is too deeply rooted in our DNA and in how we came to be for us to ever think that we can turn our backs on that fight and not expect it to grow again and take root and metastasize in the way that we're seeing it now. And if we pay any attention to history, as you said, that cycle is constant. The cycle itself is constant. So when we had Reconstruction, that was followed by redemption, right? And that was the effort for white people who assumed a certain supremacy in this country to redeem the entitlement that they thought they were owed. And after the civil rights movement, we saw a backlash. And we're seeing now a backlash to 2020. And people think that 2020 was the racial reckoning that never went anywhere. It actually did go somewhere. And it still has a palpable impact on young people today who are seeing a very different world that they want to inherit than the one we exist in right now. And I would posit that the reaction to 2020 is a reflection to how much power it holds. It is proportionate to the fear that people have for what 2020 could do and what it still can do. So I think that cycle is there. And the other thing that I thought you were going to mention, and I'm glad you talked about Robert E. Lee, but if we think about the issue of police violence, the Selma March came on the heels of the killing of Jimmy Lee Jackson, right? There was already the voting rights movement, but it was the police killing of a 26-year-old black man that spawned this march that took us over the bridge and took us into a new era of democracy. So these issues that were with us 58 years ago are still with us today.
Yeah, and that killed a young man who was defending his mother
Yes.
from being brutalized
Yes.
by a police officer
Yes.
because she was marching for voting rights
Yes.
in a majority black town in which only 2% of the African American community was registered to vote because they were not being allowed to register. It has everything. I told you this story has everything. It has
It
everything.
does.
And it even has, Rashad, I want to bring you in because there is a media story, you know. Dr. King had rebuked a Time magazine journalist who had witnessed another brutalization of voting rights marchers. And he said to this journalist, why were you trying to help the people pull them off the ground and help the marchers? You should have been taking pictures. Nobody knows that happened because you were so busy trying to be helpful that you didn't photograph it. And so when the Selma March happened, the media, Time and other reporters, they understood the assignment. That the assignment wasn't to help the marchers pull them off the ground, it was to photograph it. Yeah. And, you know, I think about the fact that video, the video and the photographs of that brutality were played live and 50 million people watched it. My favorite anecdote about this is that ABC cut away from Judgment at Nuremberg. Little trivia thing for you, right? And Judgment at Nuremberg, of course, is about Nazi soldiers whose excuse for having killed and murdered millions of Jewish people in Germany was, I was following orders. And so these people are watching Judgment at Nuremberg with Germans, and then they see American fascists beating black people because they want to vote. Yeah. And they got it. Yeah. But it was the video, it was the actual media, you know, participation that changed it. So I would love for you to reflect for a moment, where are we on the strategy of civil rights organizations like yours, civil rights organizations like LDF and others, to use the media in a strategic way, both social media and traditional, to advance the cause of justice?
Well, I absolutely believe that we are sort of in an ongoing way of continuing to develop strategies and develop the ability of both how do we reach people, how do we use the infrastructure of media, but how do we also recognize its limitations, right? The technology that has so much potential to move us into the future can drag us into the past. And we can't count on media alone without sort of infrastructure, without a Dr. King, without the infrastructure surrounding him. The media would have done exactly what institutions which are designed to make money will do. And so we can never mistake presence for power, right? Visibility, awareness, retweets, shout outs from the stage are important, but power is the ability to change the rules. And as much as we have to leverage media, we also have to hold it accountable. We have to do the work to shape the way it tells stories, because far too often, the stories that we hear are unfortunate rather than unjust. And what I mean by that is that we hear stories of inequality like it's almost a car accident. Like it sort of just happened. And even if we have visuals, folks will see those stories and believe that charitable solutions are enough and not structural change. So people will stop at sending water bottles to Flint instead of cleaning up the pipes and dealing with the tax policy issues. They'll stop at after-school programs rather than actually dealing with inequality with public education. They will say black people are less likely to get a loan from the bank instead of banks are less likely to give loans to black people, and that may sound like semantics, but if you say black people are less likely to get a loan from the bank, then people spend time saying, what's wrong with black people? Maybe we should give them financial literacy to deal with institutions which have targeted, exploited, redlined us from the very beginning. If we say banks are less likely to give loans to black people, then we actually begin to look at what is wrong with the banks and deal with structural change. And so how we tell stories, how we sort of focus our energy determines who we put the accountability on, because there's far too much work that comes out of the media that is about fixing black people rather than fixing the systems and the structures which put us in harm's way. And so that Joy, I think, is why the story of the combination between media and infrastructure, political, organized infrastructure, that type of infrastructure that was built not just by King, but by so many of those around him, so many of the organizations and leaders that built movements that could channel the aspirations and the hopes and the dreams. And in sort of a 21st century context, it's not enough for us to be loud and present on social media platforms. It is our responsibility to build the type of power that changes written and unwritten rules.
Yeah, and let me correct my, it was Life magazine, not Time magazine. Let me make sure it was Life, not Time. Well done, but I want to bring in Secretary Castro, because the thing that caused the change was the fact that people who were not in the community and part of the community and in Selma, seeing Selma from inside, it was outsiders who were horrified and shocked because somehow they had managed to miss that in their own country, this is the fascism that was taking place. But that does go to show that you need alliances across communities. And so I want you to just briefly talk about how do we build, there is a tension in the Black-Brown alliance that is stoked by people who don't care about either community, let's just be clear, but who would love to see our communities battle each other for a little bit of power, then collect together to have a lot of power. And so can you talk about that coalition building and how we can sort of build that as we're fighting, each of us, so many struggles?
It's a great question. I have a mom who was involved in the Mexican-American civil rights movement. She's a Chicana activist. And so I grew up watching an activism that was very much building on the larger, broader civil rights movement that we celebrate this weekend in Selma. And so the first thing that I think about when I think of coalitions going forward is that I think there's a very strong foundation to build on. The other thing that encourages me a lot is I believe that in this youngest generation, that they work better together than ever and are finding new ways to coalesce, to bring their voices to bear on a whole variety of issues, from police brutality to climate change to abortion rights to any number of issues. Sometimes, we inflict harm on ourselves, and Janai and I talked about this yesterday at the LDF board retreat. What happened in Los Angeles with those Latino council members and the comments that they made, the racist comments that they made, I think set things back, not only in LA, but beyond that. But the number of people who are working together already and who want to work together, the number of people who share a more common experience also that is the foundation of working together is much, much greater. And so it gives me a lot of hope that moving forward, that coalition building will get stronger and stronger. I grew up and I represented as mayor San Antonio, which today is a city that is 74% people of color, about 64% Latino, and 10% other people of color, Black, Asian American, Native American. And the only way that you've ever gotten non-white leadership at the mayoral level or beyond the county level is when there has been a strong coalition, especially a Black and brown coalition. And that has happened with increasing frequency over the last 20 years. And so I've had this front row seat to how it can happen Other cities like LA, when Tom Bradley was elected, or Antonio Villaraigosa was elected, or any number of other communities have shown us how you do this. And I think this new generation is taking it to even greater heights. That gives me a lot of hope.
Yeah. And, you know, the other thing that gives, I think, me hope is that there are still people who are willing to put themselves on the line to make these cases, right? These cases need plaintiffs. There's no case if there are no plaintiffs. And Janai, you so brilliantly said, I mean, if you think about it, at the core of what was happening in Selma in 1965 was the fight to, not just to vote, but also to march, right? The right to actually march at all, which was the whole controversy. King comes back, they don't march, and then they have to go and get, you know, right? And sort of to just establish that this is a First Amendment right, just to march across that bridge. So, but you need plaintiffs. So I want to talk to our plaintiffs here. I do want to start with you, Khadidah. If you could just reflect on how does it work? Being a plaintiff in this situation, to me, seems like a huge responsibility. There are three of you all. The case is called Milligan versus Merrill. We're going to talk to the Milligan and the Merrill. You're the Milligan. You're the Milligan. We're going to talk to the Milligan in a minute, but I want to speak to you. Can you just talk to us, those of us who've not been in this position? What is it like? What is required of you?
Wow. You know, they say with great responsibility comes, with great reward comes great responsibility. That's what it feels like. But in terms of like the case and what's it about, so we decided to sue the state of Alabama for their racist congressional map. So in Alabama, you have 7 congressional districts, and each one represents 14% of the population. And due to the census data that we were given in 2020, Alabama has a black population of 28%, so 14 plus 14 equals 2 congressional districts. However, Alabama did not give us those congressional districts. They decided to pack us all into one congressional district, which is the district that we're currently in, which is number 7. And so by doing that, they violated Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act. Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act says you cannot discriminate based upon race in any voting procedure. But that's exactly what they did by denying us of that congressional district. And when we are being denied of that congressional district, we are also being denied of black fair representation and our needs of the black community. It doesn't just put, you know, our livelihood on the line, it puts our health care on the line, our justice on the line, it puts our families on the line, but most of all, it puts our voting power on the line when we're denied a district such as the congressional one that we're being denied here in Alabama.
Yeah. And by the way, I would do a whole interview with you for an hour. You all need to read her bio. When I tell you this sister is bad, she's got so many things going on that are just fascinating. So I'm going to have to book her at some point, just to do it on the readout, so we don't take up this whole forum. But I want to talk to you because now you're an even more high-profile member of this lawsuit because obviously your name is on it. And I wonder, you know, this is not the Supreme Court that we had in the 1960s. Hard to believe that we actually had better, you know, right, a Supreme Court that was actually, that gave you more hope in the 1950s and 60s than we have today. We now have a highly politicized court, but also a highly politicized country. And so, you know, you are the most high profile sort of level of this case. Are you hopeful that you think it'll go through, or how do you come at it?
Sure, I'm definitely hopeful. I'm 6 generations removed from slavery, and so when you drive from here, from Montgomery, if you drive to Selma from Montgomery on Highway 80, you pass a small town in Lowndes County called Lounsboro, and that's where my mother's side of the family is from. We used to have a larger tract of land, now that's dwindled down over the generations to one small plot that is our family cemetery. And so there are, you know, on that plot, people that I was raised with who would be in that 3rd generation. So my big mama and big daddy and my great aunts and uncles, I grew up in a household with them. And hearing the stories of what they endured and what they went through here in Alabama definitely left a mark on me. But it was also the activism of my parents. So my mother's from Montgomery. My father's actually from Texas, so the Texas connection here is really beautiful. From Congresswoman Lee's district, he grew up in 3rd Ward in Houston. And for him, when we moved to Alabama to be a caretaker family for our elders, that was a tricky transition for him to make. And it made me sensitive to caste systems within our country, but also within the black community. He wasn't a college graduate when we moved here, So all of his connections that he had to do art and photography and cultural work in 3rd Ward and throughout Greater Houston didn't translate in Montgomery. And so I saw a person who had his head held up high in 3rd Ward come and internalized a sense of shame that he was managing a McDonald's or doing maintenance work for schools. And that just left a sensitivity in me about people who have a caste system imposed on us, because there were black and white folks that were playing into that. And so when this case rolled around, as Khadidah said, we were already doing redistricting work throughout 2021, but to have the opportunity to actually challenge what's essentially is a institutionalized caste system felt like one that would be really a life moment. But then to attach my father's name to it, because Milligan is certainly my name, but in Houston, black men were calling each other by last name long after they were out of the military. So he was known as Milligan. So for me to attach his name to this case was significant, and he also passed away over the course of our organizing for redistricting. And so I wanted to, he wrote this poem called I Want to Be a Song for My People. And I felt like the hope of that could be something that would translate to his name being on the case. And that's certainly an agency that we still work to try to build and share with other people in the state as far as operating from a place of hope.
Yeah, that is a very hopeful story. But the thing that is so powerful about what you're saying is that this is your generational home, and this is the generational home. The South is the generational home of Black America, and of the majority of African Americans still live in the South. And yet you have states like Alabama, where you said 28% of the population is Black, but they're all packed in one district. Mississippi, which is 33 some odd % Black, one member of Congress. And the fact that it's so egregious and blatant that they're using these maps as a weapon against Black voters to deprive Black people of power. So I want to talk to my 2 additional attorneys here, and I'm going to start with you, Judith, because the arguments in the Supreme Court to me are they're sort of arguing against history. The idea that you can say that there's any way that you can pack almost a third of your population into a single congressional district and that is legal at all seems to me, I'm not a lawyer, but that doesn't seem logical. And yet you have a Supreme Court that has said that the election of President Obama means racism is over. Put aside 2020 being the end of racism, they thought 2008 was the end of racism. And so they're arguing from a point of view of saying you got 1 out of 46 presidents, we're done here. We're done giving y'all stuff. And so I wonder for you, just as somebody who is in this space litigating, do you feel hopeful that we can win these battles when they are arguing from a place of illogic?
Well, that's a hard question. And I want to back up because at the Supreme Court, I want to thank Janai for inviting me. I'm a proud LDF alum also, and met her in 2000. And that's what I want to back up to. Because it doesn't start.
That's right.
Even 2008. In 2000, the Supreme Court said that there is no right to vote. They were clear in Bush v. Gore, right? And so that is the legacy that we are building upon, right? And we have to put this in the context of what is happening, right? This is, for some of us, really the last stand of white supremacy. Because they see the demographics shifting. They know what's coming. They know that the power is going to shift hands. And so what do? You do what, my daughter plays basketball, you do what is called a triple threat. The triple threat is, number 1, we're going to gerrymander so we can hold power for forever. Number 2, what we're going to do is then we're going to change the laws to pass voter suppression laws. Number 3 is, after we do all of that, we're going to make sure that we weaken the protections in all of the courts so that those of us who litigate have no tools. Right? Have no tools. But you know what? The tool that we have is sitting right here.
Yes.
The tool for those of us who litigate at Advanced Project, we don't look just to the courts because we know when you go to court, you're giving up power. You're giving power to people that are mostly white men sitting with black robes on and some white women who've never litigated a case before, but they're on the Supreme Court, right? And we're giving them the power.
I know I'm not in church, but well.
And so the power, right,
really has to be with the people, which is what happened in Selma to begin with, right? And so while we're fighting in the courts, while we're pushing for Congress to do what it can and to pass the laws that we need, the power is with the people. The power is with the people to create the stories, to build the power, to change the rules, to move the needle in the media, to tell the right stories so we can push the courts in the right direction. Right? And so that's where we've got to be. It's an inside-outside game.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, here, I told you this story has everything, because here, there's just all sorts of irony, Maya, because the very Voting Rights Act that came of the Bloody Sunday attack is the very act that is now being eviscerated by the Supreme Court and taken apart bit by bit, because they've decided that 58 years later, we no longer need protection, while they're also gerrymandering black folk into one district, even though they're 28% of the population, right? So it's kind of all happening at once. And then you go to 2000, some of the architects of the Bush v. Gore strategy, then fast forward, are the architects of the plan to do the fake electors to keep Donald Trump in office. Same people.
And claim it's constitutional.
And say it's constitutional. And wanted
They
to
just
use,
made that up, by the way.
Correct. And wanted to use the Justice Department and the Supreme Court. It's like a full circle. And so I just, for you, can you lay out how the battlefield looks on the legal side, on the side that just believes people just ought to have the right to vote? Because they are doing these in these concentric circles of illogic that keep the civil rights side wrapped up in litigation that feels like it's all going in the same direction as Roe. Whew. I'm sorry.
When Joy asks you a question, she's actually said so much that you have to figure out what to say. It's always the challenge on being on the readout, and always brilliant. She already blew my mind on the plane, now you've blown it again. And in many ways, I'm just going to repeat what all of my amazing colleagues have said, which is one, let's just start with this. If we didn't have power, they wouldn't be constantly trying to change the rules. If we didn't have power, they would not be constantly having to change the rules. So what we are seeing is exactly what we saw in Selma. And I just want one little historic anecdote because it matters, right? It's Selma, right after Bloody Sunday, roughly 600 folks walking, trying to get across the Edmund Pettus Bridge. Well, by the end of March, they had 30,000. 30,000 marching across the Edmund Pettus Bridge. And on the way, there were some white kids, drove up in a car from Selma. I think actually they were in Lowndes County when they stopped them, but I could be wrong about that. But stopped, and some of the marchers were engaging them. And they started to say, well, people are only marching because they get paid. In fact, there's a woman in the hospital just bled to death because she earned $15,000 sleeping with 41 black men. Okay, y'all, that was a lie. It was misinformation. They believed it. So even as marchers were marching, even as the numbers had gone from 600 to 30,000, the disinformation was spreading through the white community in an effort to say, all they have to do is register. All they have to do is register. They were shouting at protesters, just register. But I guess what I'm saying is, in order to keep control, you have to both lie and change the rules. And the reason that matters to your question, Joy, is every single thing we do to tell the truth, and for communities, for leaders, whether it's the Courageous 8 or in any community that we have seen across this country, and even today, with Black Lives Matter, we've already got 32 states trying to make it hard to protest, saying that it's unconstitutional to protest. We saw that also around, right? The Courageous 8 were violating the law because it was more than 3 black people having a meeting with the Dallas County Voter League, right? So it's a repeat of what we've already seen, and it's a response to the power we've built. And I will say that what matters is when we cannot see our way over the bridge, when they're trying to bloody our bodies when we walk across is when the lawyers matter the most. It's when the community leaders matter the most, and it's when the coalition matters the most. So, and I say that with the privilege of sitting in service at the Leadership Conference for Civil and Human Rights, a place I got to because we all came through but I say that because it's 230 national organizations. And yes, they're Latino. And yes, they're white women. And yes, they're all the traditional black leadership. And yes, they're Asian American. And guess what? They're people with disabilities. They're people who are elderly. They're people who are fighting for gun rights. And every single one of them is showing up for the Voting Rights Act. Every single one of them is saying, oh, I get it now. Instead of just telling me I can't have an abortion, they're also going to make sure it's harder for all the people going to show up and vote you out of office if you try to put your ban on my body. Oh, now I see why it matters that you're doing that to black people. And that's what we're seeing right now. And I just want to, and I want to say this because I don't know where the legal cases are going to go. I don't know. I know what Khadidah and Evan are going to keep doing.
That's right.
And I know what the rest of us are going to keep doing, supporting Khadidah and Evan. And I know what else we're going to do. We're going to be figuring out with Rashad how we build that power he's talking about, and we're going to be showing up on your show because you never stop. And this congresswoman right here, let me just say, she scares me half the time, and I'm on her side.
I'm telling you.
And don't think if I'm not being aggressive enough, she doesn't call me and say, you didn't call me. And I'm not lying. I could show you the text, but I won't. But this is the other thing But this is the other thing I just want to say, because I also want to go back to Julian's. And Julian, I mean, this man is still doing it. Still doing it every day. But what Julian said is the truth. And I'm going to quote Hitler, so forgive me. But what Hitler said is, whoever owns the youth controls the future. That's what Hitler said. And then you know what they did? 1933, burned 25,000 books.
Yeah.
Well, gee, what are they doing today in Florida? What are they doing today in 32 states? We've got 1,600 titles of books like The Hate You Give, like Toni Morrison, like Roberto Clemente, banned. Mouse, which is a Holocaust book, banned. But it's all of our books. But our kids are all right. Because here's the other thing. I know it's confusing. I just got a face like, really? Now, I don't mean they're all right because we're not in trouble. I mean they're all right because what we saw in the midterms, they said, oh, can I curse? We're not. No?
I see a cross over there. So I would say no. Okay. I'm always looking for Jesus. That's what I'm saying. Hallelujah.
I had to ask because after 2016, there were a lot of words started coming out of my mouth.
I'm always down for one out in this.
So, thank you, Joy. See, I had to go.
I'm going to save souls
So they
and voters.
But they said, heck nah. Right. Because we saw the second highest voter turnout of the generation that with Gen Z and millennials, my kids, with millennials, are becoming a third of the electorate. And let me tell you something about these numbers, and we've polled them and other people have polled them. They vote for civil rights. They vote for a government that gets engaged in equality. They will say, 62% will say the government should do more for black people. Not just equality, for black people, and we see it across race. They say immigrants do more for this country than they take. They say that women should have a right to choose, that people should have a right to decide their own identities. They say it at a margin over 10 to 12 percentage points above my generation. And that's why they're trying to stop them, but they can't. Because every single thing they've done just builds that coalition, builds that resistance, and builds that demand. And that's why we saw what we saw in the midterms. And that's why if we focus, and this is a thing that we are working on as a coalition, on getting 4.5 million, just in the swing states. Just in the swing states, 4.5 million people who registered to vote in 2020 but didn't, or who have registered since 2020. We changed state houses just by getting them to vote. We don't tell them who to vote for. We change state houses, and they know it. So they don't want them to learn, they don't want them to read, and they don't want them talking to one another. And they can't stop it.
Amen. Look, it's good to have somebody who could see, because I squint and I don't see. But I want to recognize Congresswoman Maxine Waters, who is right there in the second row. Now we have 3 members of Congress, members of the Congressional Black Caucus. Thank you, Rashad. Rashad's got that. He's the eagle eye that spotted her. She tried to be low key in the second row. She tried to slip in, right? But we spotted her. We spotted her. Well, now I want to go to the Congresswoman who is here with us. And by the way, just to what Maya said, it is really important. I'm a polling geek, so even though polls are, lately. But in the last election, for the first time since the 1960s, white voters under 30, because even with Obama, white voters under 30 still voted majority Republican. White voters under 30 have always voted majority Republican. White voters are 60-40 Republican, no matter what the age. For the first time, 55% of white voters 30 and under voted Democratic in this last midterm. So I'm going to tell you, when they say they don't like wokeness, they don't mean us being woke. They mean their kids. What they're afraid of is not black. Black folks been saying woke since the 40s. They didn't care about the word woke. When they cared about it was when white kids started voting for Black Lives Matter. That's the woke. They don't like the empathy of their children and their grandchildren, because you know how they gonna vote? With blacks. And that's what they're afraid of. That's why they're afraid of woke. I want to get the Congresswoman in, because you want to talk about people who believe in Mission Impossible. My husband and I executive produced a film called The Big Payback, which if you haven't seen it, it's an excellent film. Erica Alexander, my sister Erica, co-directed it, and it's about the fight for reparations. And when I tell you this sister is the star of that, is the star of it, because you've been fighting for reparations and you took up that fight in Congress, and I commend you for that. But I want to talk to you about this legislative. You want to talk about Mission Impossible. The House of Representatives right now is a bit of an asylum. It should probably have a padded walls built in. It's challenging who's running it now. So is there any legitimate hope before Hakeem Jeffries takes over as Speaker, which will happen in 2 years? I mean, I'm just doing the math, right? I mean, they ain't going to hold that House. But in the next 2 years, can we think that it's possible to get a John Lewis Voting Rights Act through?
Well, let me first of all thank LDF for staying the course, and all of those who have participated in this panel. I'm so glad your father came out of 3rd Ward. I will tell you his legacy lives on, and proud of the work and the fight you have. There are so many friends here that I need to call. Janai, congratulations, baby and carriage, and I know. And this is my reparations brother. This is my criminal justice brother. This is my housing brother. And the rest of you are my sisters. We are grateful for you. Thank you to Terri Sewell, who is fighting the good fight. And thank you to Auntie Max, who never gives up the fight. We are so grateful for Maxine Waters as a key and giant leader in our Congress. Thank you so very much. So, this is only a smidgen of the voting rights memos, articles, painful statements that have been made since 2013. I just have to give a brief chronological history, and that is the Shelby case. Isn't it shameful that we have not been able to reauthorize the Voting Rights Act since the Shelby case? Many of you may have remembered, this is history books, around 06 and 07, and it spread across America. They're getting rid of the Voting Rights Act. They're getting rid of the Voting Rights Act. That was when John Conyers, bunches of us as CBC members joined with our colleagues, tried to calm the waters, and we reauthorized it, bipartisan. and had a celebration, if you could believe, at the George Bush White House to sign the reauthorization. With the Shelby case and the ridiculous analysis of Justice Roberts, which is we have thousands of black elected officials, thousands of Latinos, it's Mecca, it's a day in the sun, why do we need the Voting Rights Act, particularly Section 5? And of course, Justice Ginsburg said, well, that's like getting rid of an umbrella on a rainy day, or because we got rid of polio, should we stop having the polio vaccine? Right. Some people say that about COVID. But it is an upside down thinking. So to answer your question directly, it will be a steep hill in this session. But we need the same 30,000 plus that crossed that bridge after Bloody Sunday. And that's what we have not had, to be able to wake up the powers to be. Let me be very frank. The Senate poses a very deep challenge. Very deep challenge. Even when we had 50-50 and it was broken, the tie by Vice President Harris, ably so, there were elements that wouldn't even get us to the 50-50. We now have 51. It's because the people in Georgia voted in spite of the legislation. Thank you, Georgia. So many of us were down in Georgia. Oh, there's somebody shouting. So many of us were down there. It was a joy beyond the joy. We overcame that atrocious Neanderthal legislation, same kind in Texas. I think we have to think in a way that says that we have an inside game and an outside game. Right. We have a court game and an activist game. We have an LDF game and a Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights game, right, and the NAACP and others. And I think these are the years to show that kind of game. Because what is happening is in the state legislatures across America, they are saying, we got this. In the Congress, we got this. Because we have just a margin of victory. If we're like 5 votes down, the Senate is where it is, but why can't the Senate bring up the John Robert Lewis Voting Rights Act and pass it? That has to be the question of the outside game. Because if we had one house to pass it, we passed it in the last session. Right. Then we went, as they say, over the way. And over the way was, now we have one vote passed. That's a big majority, relatively speaking. That is a big majority. And I think we have to convey to the public, yes, we can. We shouldn't get them caught up in, oh, you're in the minority in the House. No, we work for you. The Voting Rights Act needs to pass, and you need to tell us to go pass it. We can get it out of the Judiciary Committee or on the Senate side, or should, and we can do a lot on the House side by just encouraging them if we can't get it out, or we can shame. But the question is, don't let the lull go even if there is difficulty, because once we have a lull, let's get to the 118th Congress, what are we in now, 119th Congress. Let's wait. No, we can't, because your point is very well taken. Let me just say this. Section 5 was a mecca, was like, oh my God. And by the way, the Voting Rights Act was like 5 pages long. And it was unbelievable. It was like, it was manna from heaven. I mean, we did so much with the 1965 Voting Rights Act, but Section 5, Secretary knows that, we did so much. Section 2 is the rescue. Section 5 was we could pre-clear, no, you can't do that, sit down, you can't redistrict that way, sit down, you cannot pass that Georgia bill, sit down, you can't pass the Texas bill, sit down. Oh, we love that. We had a good time. Lawyers had a good time. Section 2 is, it is the lifeboat. It is the rope in the water. We are drowning. Here comes Section 2. And then Section 2 says, after they've left the house, you can get them back in with Section 2. Yes, that is discriminatory. Most Southerners, like me, are in redistricting lawsuits. We don't even have a district. We ran in a district that is temporary. We're in the courts. We're in the courts on Section 2. So they know that they can crush us. So I believe our message should be that the Voting Rights Act belongs to us. The John Robert Lewis Advancement Act belongs to us, the people. The 15th Amendment guarantees our right to vote. And let me just say this. I go beyond this, my heritage. And everybody knows I am, rightly so, H.R. 40, the Commission to Study and Develop, Study Slavery and Develop Reparation Proposals. Thank you, my teammate, because I don't think there's any shame in that game. It is so well documented, but it all depends on elections as well. And the question of Section 5 and the 15th Amendment and Section 2, they don't belong to me as an African American. I say they belong to all Americans. And I'm pushing that agenda, and I need more people that don't look like me to be able to say that if they come for me at night, they'll come for you in the morning. Right. You won't have a vote as well. Right. And so we need to collectively say to our elected representatives, one, you need to represent. We know that in the community. Represent. I'm representing. You need to be able to represent. And that means you represent all of America. And if I don't have a vote in 3rd Ward, Houston, Texas, you won't have one in Little Rock, Arkansas. Nor will you have one in Utah. Nor will you have one in upstate New York or New England. And that's what is not being penetrated to those folk who would have the ability to change their mind. You ask the question, what will it harm you for there to be a legitimate Voting Rights Act? And I think, Joy, you've hit the nail on the head. People analyze about what they will lose, what will be taken away from them. And they really should analyze it from the perspective of how we will be better together, how the accountability will be better. Maybe we will not elect an individual who has been 10 different people in the last 6 weeks of the time that they got elected to the United States Congress. Maybe there will be accountability of that district. If they had the ability to make sure, because New York's under a voting rights challenge as well. So we need to be able to say that your right is my right, your vote is my vote, and if one vote is gone, my vote is gone, your vote is gone. I believe that what we should do in the 118th Congress is that we should not let it rest. We should not let the crisis of voting rights rest. And we should challenge the House, the other body as we are supposed to call it. We cannot mention the Senate on the floor. That is an insult. So we cannot talk. We have to say, and Maxine, I'm sorry, Congresswoman Waters, we have slip-ups all the time. Our memory fades. We can't remember. Names get called, and you're not supposed to do any of that. So you say the other body. And I think there should be a massive effort for the other body. What is the other body doing? Have they put the Voting Rights Act on the floor? The other body. And a massive effort of not letting them rest is going to be very important. Because, again, you are going to crumble the house of cards if you take 5, which is already going, that's Section 5, and 4 is a formula, and you take Section 2. So the final sentence on this is, people voted in Georgia, Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. They braved a deadly pandemic to exercise their right to vote in an act of political self-defense against the most corrupt, incompetent, indifferent, and racist administration since the end of the Civil War. Most people know which one I'm talking about. But it was those voters in those states that saved us. They charged out in the midst of no water, long lines, cold, whatever it was, to do their job. I'm going to put the onus on us as representative government. And we need to be fighting in the halls of Congress for you to see us pushing the agenda of empowerment of all of our voters. We should not rest until we do that. If we can't get it done in the 118th, we'll certainly be poised to get it done with Speaker Jeffries and a Democratic United States Senate.
Amen. All right, amen. So I think the Congresswoman has given us a good turn, because I want us to do a future, I want to go down the road here and give us some future leaning strategies so that we can be prepared for the fight ahead. So I do want to start with you, Janai, but we're going to start with you, but I'm going to have your section be called Scaring is Caring. We do this on the show. We call it Scaring is Caring. I just, because I like to know. I want to know what's coming. It's like when you're on a roller coaster. What I hate is going up, because you don't know what's coming. You know, when you hit that top, that's when it's really terrifying. But to me, the most terrifying part is going up, right? I want to know what's coming. So what should we have on our agenda for those who are taking notes and mental notes? What are the cases we need to be looking out for? What are the legal fights ahead of us that we need to be preparing ourselves for a fight inside, outside on?
All right, so I am going to scare you all a little bit, but, you know, it's okay. It's okay. Fear is a motivator sometimes.
That's it.
But I will start with Milligan versus Merrill. And I got to tell you, I mean, you see these plaintiffs, these clients of ours right here, they almost don't need lawyers because they are just so amazing and know the acute threats that we're facing. This case is not just about Alabama, though. I want to be clear, and this is the scary part. The Legal Defense Fund was successful in proving that in 3 states, 3 different congressional redistricting plans are based on racial discrimination. We found that not only in Alabama, but South Carolina and Louisiana. And those are only the cases that LDF is working on. And those are only congressional maps that we've been focusing on. There are state maps, there are judicial maps, there are school board maps, there are maps of all kinds across the country that are racially gerrymandered. And this case that actually deals with Section 2, and the Congresswoman explained it so well, that Section 2 is a life raft. And it is the only thing that is giving the Voting Rights Act any body at this point, any applicability to actually be an intervention in this type of discrimination. So a lot rests on this case, Merrill versus Milligan. The court already, in another case called Brnovich last year, already narrowed Section 2 to some extent. When you talk about voter suppression tactics, the court already said, you know, well, the test is this way and that way, and Alito came up with some invention that has no basis in any other legal precedent. So they've already started to narrow and whittle away at Section 2. And now, when we talk about gerrymandering, and Judy said it so specifically, it is a way of actually using systemic racism in the form of political lines to entrench political power and to make white supremacy something that is in perpetuity, because the numbers don't bear it out. The demographics don't bear it out. But if you change the rules and you change the lines, you can entrench it. So a lot is resting on this case. I don't mean to scare y'all too, because this is y'all's case. But it is really a significant one and a linchpin. But of course, we always have a backup plan. We're not just going to rest on our litigation as much faith as we have in our cases. We're also on the ground, and I'm even thinking of, I don't know where tall Steve Lance is, who was just doing the work in New Jersey, along with the folks at the New Jersey Institute for Social Justice, and Jared, who was just part of the launch of this campaign, was it just last week, where we are fighting to pass a Voting Rights Act in New Jersey in the same way that we passed the most progressive state Voting Rights Act in New York just last year. We are not limiting it to the courts. We are not limiting it to Congress. We will continue to push Congress for sure. But we are also going to push a state game and a local strategy, because we can't leave any opportunity untapped. It's too critical. This next generation of young people who are relying on us to give them a pathway, we've got to seize every possible modicum of power that is available to us. So we have an organizing game, we've got a legislative advocacy game, we've got a strategic narrative, strategic communications game. Every possible intervention that exists, we are trying to tap into it, along with our partners, many of whom are part of this conversation. So it's a little scary, but we're not afraid.
All right.
That's all I can say.
Amen. Amen. All right. That's excellent. Thank you very much. I'm going to ping pong a little bit because Congresswoman Sewell said that, see this community. And, I do want to acknowledge that there was this devastating tornado, and just take a pause for a moment. And given that I have your expertise, I'm going to take full advantage of it. Give us some forward-leading strategies. How can this community make sure that it gets the resources that are needed, given the fact that this is a state that is not exactly friendly political territory to Black Alabamans? And so how do we make sure that those resources come here? How can people wage that fight to make sure that this community is healed?
constant pressure and constantly staying on the organizations that are at the forefront of responding. Usually it's HUD, FEMA, right, and the SBA. The good news is I know firsthand that Congresswoman Sewell is a great fighter. Also, I think Secretary Fudge at HUD is somebody that understands and is sensitive to making sure that people don't get left behind and that black communities are well represented when we're talking about SBA loans and HUD funding and everything else that comes in disaster recovery. All of the activism that you can bring to bear on the regional offices of those organizations, and then also, of course, on national leadership makes a difference. And from my experience, the one thing I would say that folks should keep in mind is that there's always flexibility. I saw that in New York, New Jersey. I saw it 10 years later in Louisiana. And so sometimes when the answer is no from HUD, that actually is not the answer.
Yeah.
And so all of the organizing and the pushing, the coalescing that you can do can make a difference, especially if you have folks in power like I think you have at HUD right now and in the White House that are willing to listen and willing to work with folks.
And I'm going to keep you for one moment. Give us some hope, because I remember years ago, I don't know if you remember this, you and your twin, we sat at the same table. I don't remember what state we were in, but we were with Chris Matthews. It was like the hardball team, you and your staff members and your twin. And we talked about Texas. And you said, give Texas 10 years. And I think that was in 2012.
Let's pretend that was within 10 years.
Okay. For those who, because look, because I'm going to have this conversation with you, with the two of you as well. I'm obsessed with the South because, it's still where we live, right? And I think that the Democratic Party makes a tremendous mistake pretending the South doesn't exist and pretending there are only 16 states. Whenever they plan elections, they're like, we'll plan them in these 16 states, maybe 17, we added Arizona, right? And then they're like, every other state doesn't exist. And that means the whole South means half of African Americans get written off when it comes to spending the money and hiring the consultants, et cetera. Then all of a sudden Georgia happens and they're shocked. So give us a strategy or two to get Texas where demographically it can be. It is a majority, it is not a majority white state anymore, which means it's an apartheid state, right?
Yeah, no, it's majority non-white now.
Yeah.
So, and I'll make this brief, but I think everybody will see what I'm talking about. It is changing. Exactly what happened in places like Virginia, and earlier than that, in places like Colorado, what happened in North Carolina in 2008, and it's still a swing state, I think, is happening in Texas. Obama lost to Romney in 2012 by 16 points. Hillary Clinton lost by 9 points, and Biden lost by 5.6 points. So that's over the course of 8 years. During the Trump years, Democrats gained back 12 state House seats, 2 state Senate seats, and 2 congressional seats. And in 2020, it stayed basically the same. With all of their gerrymandering leading up after 2020, in the state House, Republicans only gained 1 seat in the state House. Basically, all of that demographic change, they're finally eking out every last bit of power that they can, but it's even their most recent tools didn't get them that much.
Yeah.
So it's happening, but this is a state now that has 22 media markets. It traditionally has not been a strong union state, and so some of the things that help other states move along have not been as strong there. And scaling the kind of investment that you need to scale to turn it around takes a lot of resources.
Yeah.
So keep the faith. Don't roll your eyes the next time you hear. We have great leadership like Congresswoman Jackson Lee, who has been fighting the good fight for a long time, and it is making a difference. Once that happens, that's 40 electoral votes.
Yeah, and
That's
keep in mind that it took 100 years from Robert E. Lee waving that white flag, and dozens of Robert E. Lee statues going up all over the country, and him being celebrated as the winner to get the Voting Rights Act, which Selma got us. You have to be patient. Politics is not a game of instant gratification. It's not like getting a Happy Meal or a Big Mac meal, right? It's a long wait, like at a good restaurant. It's like making gumbo. It takes a long time. But you're going to be thankful when it's done. So I want to swing back over here and talk, because look, if you think Texas is tough, Alabama's tougher. I think Barack Obama got like 11% of the white vote here, right? And so you've got racially polarized voting. The vast majority of white voters, it's much more than in a Michigan where you can get 40% of white voters. Here you get like 11%. But of that generation of white voters, talk about the strategies for getting voters of color in a state like Alabama to have enough hope to register and vote, because I know that's a challenge in southern states where people feel like we don't win anything. So if you each want to talk about that, we'll start with you.
So we first have to start with the numbers here in Alabama just to get some orientation. There are about 5 million people here in the state, and 4 million are 18 and older, right? Of that 4 million, according to our Secretary of State's office, there are about 3.7 million registered voters. Now, our state, as you've heard, 27-28% African American. If we add up people of color, that's 36% of the population. So of our registered voters, that's about 1.3 million. This is not a voter registration problem here. There are about 200. There's a margin, 300,000, 400,000 that, with voter rights restoration and other outreach, need to be brought in. But it's not like what our neighboring state in Georgia has been going. We just got to the population that they had in the year 1970. So that's been a state of constant growth. So for here, as you just said, there's about a 30%, 70% split when you look at statewide elections, and it really plays out along racial lines. So the state of Alabama's future is in its growth, in the growth of our cities. And if we look at the census data, people of color here have driven the growth of the state, particularly like new Americans. Had we not had folks, many of whom undocumented, in our communities, we would have lost one of our congressional seats. So finding ways to support those who are doing civic engagement work, small business owners from our communities, is essential to making sure that they have enough hope to want to continue to fight and sustain their work here. And then also speaking to Alabamians, as we call her, in the Alabama diaspora, people who are from here but live elsewhere, to let them know about the beautiful work being done by activists, by teachers who are carrying the torch and carrying the legacy. And those folks can be supported from anywhere in the world. Right. And so as we build that culture, then there's more of a reason for people to come here and to stay here to continue doing that work and growing our population.
That's fantastic. Khadidah, can you build on that?
He took the words.
Well, how can we support, Alabama Forward, I love the name of it because it is so hopeful. How can we be supportive of the work that you all are doing?
Yeah, so we have an initiative called Shake the Field, and it's to bring civic engagement and culture together, because the issue that we see amongst Alabama is like a lack of education, or like people don't see interest, and that's only because people are only gonna be close to the issues that they care about. And so we found ways, innovative ways to get people to talk about the issues. So like we have an album that talks about social justice issues in Alabama. We partner with local artists. We have like a creative hub called Liberation Lab, where we're partnering with them, and they're creating content that's talking about social justice. So just trying to find new ways to educate people who aren't voting. Because like Evan said, we don't have a voter registration problem, we just have a voter apathy problem. Nobody wants to get out and go vote. So with our initiative and the work that we do at Alabama Forward, we're pushing forward, finding different ways for people to come out and not be so against it, because I think that's a huge thing. It's just like, oh no, they don't care, and it's like, no, that's not what's really going on. It's deeper than what you think it is, and come to us and help us. Let us help you get educated about what the problems are.
Yeah, absolutely. No, absolutely. And support organizations like Alabama Forward that are actually doing the work, and make sure y'all get the investments. This is also a fundraising appeal. Everybody needs to get some money. Let's come back here. I want to come back to you, Rashad, because the other piece that we're dealing with that is challenging in in the work that I do, but also even more so in the places that you're fighting, disinformation. Give us some strategies to fight the disinformation that we're seeing just proliferate and explode on social media, and apparently on Fox News, where they just say stuff that ain't true, and to get the people to watch.
What we're seeing with disinformation is not an accident, it's manufactured. And it's manufactured through a whole set of choices. And so until we actually have rules of the road, until the FCC and Congress actually regulates, until we actually do the work to hold tech companies accountable for the incentive structures that amplify certain types of things and don't amplify other types of things, we're going to be constantly running up the hill, hoping that we can outpace billionaires as they make money. And I do think that this gets to this larger idea that we try to operate at Color of Change, is to hold the line between real solutions and fake solutions. And this idea that we're sort of kind of in an ongoing way sort of thinking about what's coming down the pipe, right? And we will have a lot more fake solutions hitting us in the years to come. And one of those fake solutions is the solution of diversity alone, right? That black faces and brown faces in high places will be the saving grace without structural change. And right, the New York Police Department is more diverse than it ever has been before, but that doesn't mean that New Yorkers are any safer from the police, right? We saw what happened in Memphis. We see what happens through these strategies at tech companies, in Hollywood, and everywhere else where our stories need to be told, consequences for our lives are at stake. And so to this extent of mis and disinformation, there is a deep sort of disinformation around the role of diversity, and we actually have to do more to sort of raise the floor on what's acceptable and push up the ceiling on what's possible. And that requires structural change and structural solutions. It also requires us to hold corporations as accountable as we hold government, and face down and actually tell a full story about why we don't have change. Because when we don't tell a full story, we end up with, well, the Democrats didn't pass the George Floyd Act.
Right.
And so now we're going to be mad at the Democrats. While there are a whole set of corporations that said Black Lives Matter, but then gave their money to politicians that stood in the way of public safety. Right? There are police unions that get to sit at the table one day and then get to stand in front of Kim Fox's office with the Proud Boys the next day, and they get a place at the table. And until we actually hold the enablers and those that play hear no evil, speak no evil, and see no evil with our lives, we're actually not going to be able to leverage full political power. And so our strategy has to be broader than just the political space. It has to operate in all of the sectors that impact our lives. And that means that we have to channel our energy, not in our marches, not just towards the places of sort of government decision making, but to all of the places, because we will lose in the back rooms if we don't get people lined up at the front door. And that means more than just the government front door. It means the corporate front door, the media front door, the Silicon Valley front door, the Hollywood front door. And make sure that those forces understand that there'll be consequences and there'll be rewards. And I believe in terms of the strategy moving forward, we need the legal strategy, we need the grassroots strategy, but we have to constantly recognize that the story that we tell our people and the story about how change happens has to be a full story, because we have to face down all of the sectors that impact people's lives and really, day in and day out, hold that line between what is real and what is fake, because our opponents would every single day want us to believe that they can just add more black faces to the places that are impacting our lives, and we will go away because we got some jobs, and we will never get the type of structural change that makes our lives better.
Amen. 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 Coming back to my right here, Judy, let's talk about another issue that is facing folks here in this state, but in many states, and I'm thinking hashtag Florida. Give us some strategies for fighting this sort of onslaught of attacks on even telling our story. I'm not sure it's actually legal in Alabama schools to tell the story of what happened on the Edmund Pettus Bridge. I'm not sure it's legal to say who Edmund Pettus was in school. There are books that have been banned here that include autobiographies for children of Dr. King. In this state, there was a school district that told African American students that they couldn't have a Black History Month celebration unless they limited it to topics after 1970, which would mean they couldn't even talk about what happened in '65. Give us some strategies to fight that, which seems like it's a constant battle.
Okay. Well, I mean, so first of all, we're in a time where what we're being told is that white people need to be comfortable. And, for Black people, we've never been comfortable.
Correct.
Right? And we've also never been comfortable with the history that white supremacy created for us, right? And built as the foundation of this country. And there was a time when black people, it was against the law to read. Now it's against the law to read about us. And that is being done very strategically. This isn't something that is a jokey joke, right? But this is about erasure. But it's also like erasure of like structural racism, right? Not just the stories, but the fact that racism still exists, right? So that there will be no solutions. So all the power that we're building will be for naught because we don't need solutions because we're all good, right? The Supreme Court is telling us when it comes to voting, as long as we all have an equal opportunity to vote, then we're okay. And so I think that, you know, one of the things that, while this is troubling, et cetera, one of the things that brings me hope is the fact that I feel like our movement for racial justice is stronger than it has been in decades, right? When I think about what happened in Selma and in the years after that, there was a little bit of a lull for a while, a little bit of a lull. When we weren't taken to the streets, where our organizations, the infrastructure of our organizations was weak. But now we have a movement that if we look at what happened to Mike Brown, right? The murder of Mike Brown and all of the movement that came up after that. But not only the movement that came up, but that the fact that that movement was being connected with SNCC. That our elders were training up our youngers, right? And that connection about the history, the understanding of the why, but also the way to organize was happening. And so for me, this idea of what is the strategy is organize, 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 right? And understand that there is a power grab that is going on, that is happening at the state level. And if we organize, the demographics, you know, people say that destiny is not demographics. I'm trying to make it that. And trying to make it that is so that we have the power that matches our numbers, so that that kind of thing cannot happen, so that the rich history of this country, including the fact that the first time I came to Alabama, I was called a Yankee, and I'm from New York. I was like, I'm a Mets fan, not a Yankee. I didn't understand. I didn't understand that the Confederacy was still a thing, right? But to understand that we can actually overcome that with the organizing that we do among all of our communities. Queens
Queens
I'm a
in the
Mets
house.
girl.
I just
Sorry.
want to say that I'm from Brooklyn and I'm a Yankee fan, but thank you very much. I appreciate it. Sorry. Okay, I'm going to wrap. I'm going to close here with my final two panel members, and then we are going to wrap. But I'm going to come to you, Maya, because I would actually love to get your opinion on how we can take some perspective, because you talked about the fact that you're starting to see accountability. I can tell you that a lot of folks that I talk with, their sense of what accountability looks like is all wrapped around one man, the former president of the United States. Give us some perspective on how we can level our expectations about this one individual's level of accountability, because, I don't know, my expectations are rather low, but give us some perspective.
Well, let's just say CPAC. Because I think what we're seeing is it isn't about a man, it is about a white supremacist movement. It is a movement that has deep and old roots, but it is showing itself very visibly, unapologetically, explicitly. There is no more Southern strategy in it where it's like wink, wink, nod, nod, we'll just do a dog whistle and pretend we didn't say some racist. Like, no, we're just going to say it out loud and be proud about it. And the reason I say that is that we have so many examples now, and we have heard, and we need to build on this conversation about, but are the Proud Boys going away if Donald Trump goes to prison? Because the answer is no. In fact, they may have fewer chapters, but they have more members. Are the Oath Keepers going away? We don't know. I mean, some of them going to jail. But I think the point is, when we look at Buffalo, when we look at Tree of Life in Pittsburgh, when we look at all these acts of hate, El Paso, if we look at all of the acts of hate that we see, it is no longer centrally organized. It is now its own movement, meaning it doesn't require a single leader. And that is what Trump gave permission to, but it predated him. He simply used it as a tool, and it will still be with us when he is gone, no matter how he's gone. But that call, that reminder, all the examples we have, means that we have the tools we need to organize exactly what Judith is talking about.
Yeah. And now my closer, Congresswoman, what letter should we be writing our member of Congress when we get home tonight? What is the one ask we can make that is succinct and simple? What's the letter? There we go.
I will take a moment. Take a moment. Elections count, and I don't think whether you're in the majority or the minority that inertia should be the call of the day. And I think the letter should be that the United States Congress need not be afraid of issues dealing with race as being the third rail. And whether or not it is to pass the John Robert Lewis Voter Enhancement Act, H.R. 40, or to take a stand preliminarily against the epidemic across America of eliminating diversity, equality, and what's the last one? The I. Inclusion, thank you, which is the rage of states like Florida and Texas. I think also, where did critical race theory come from? Where was the latitude and the comfort level to be able to suggest that I should be extinguished? Because that is what you're saying to me. I should be extinguished. And so I think the letter should be that this is no time in 2023 to abandon the basic infrastructure of this country, which is premised post 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment that we all are created equal. It was not standing up previous to that. But post that, it was standing up, and insist that there be a response to the issues that deal with race. And race does deal with elections. Race deals with telling my story. Race deals with diversity, inclusion, and equity. And then finally, of course, race deals with the ultimate because elections count. And I cannot leave here without a tribute to my dear late friend, the Honorable John Lewis, who loved the Legal Defense Fund,
we loved him back.
loved Joy Reid, loved all of you, if not by name, loved the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights, loved Julian Castro, and followed in the footsteps of my predecessor and mentor, the Honorable Barbara Jordan, who was the one who amended the 1965 Voting Rights Act to include a black woman language minority, which in essence gave the Castro brothers and others the opportunity to be members of Congress, mayors, secretaries of housing, etc. So we can work together, my final point, but the letter should be that we will not be extinguished. We are here to stay, and our issues are to be front and forward. And John Lewis, may he rest in power.
Amen.
Be able to live and rest in peace.
It is,
Thank you.
it is Saturday, so I'm going to give you a Seventh-day Adventist amen. Please give a round of applause and wonderful thanks, Secretary Julian Castro, the great Maya Wiley, our Congresswoman from Texas, Sheila Jackson Lee, Rashad Robinson, my friend Judith Brown-Zianis. This is the Milligan, Evan Milligan, in the Milligan case, and Khadidah Stone. It was wonderful to meet you today. And our leader, our fearless leader, the one and only Janai Nelson. Thank you for all you do. God bless.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for being here tonight. I have just one or two quick things to say. One, I got to give it up for Joy Reid.
Yeah.
Did she not handle that conversation? The Queen, let me say this. When I started this and I shouted out Pastor Strong, he wasn't in the room, but he is with us now. He's over there videoing us in the corner. But Pastor Strong, I just want to tell you how much we are so grateful for your hospitality and for enabling this to happen. We have a reception that I hope you all will stay around for, but also please join me in thanking the ASL interpreters who made sure that everyone could understand and see this.
Yes, they had to work. They worked too.
So thank you, everyone. In the words of John Lewis, democracy is not a state, it is an act. And I expect action from each and every one of you in service of our democracy. Thank you.